Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Freedom Adventure. My name's Jason, and this is a channel where we slowly and one project at a time convert a decommissioned ambulance into a miniature Class C motorhome. So does your camper have propane? Well, ours does. Or at least ours is going to. It seems to be the primary fuel that people use to go ahead and supply power to hot water heaters, stoves, things of that nature in the camping community. Well, we're no different. Since day one, it's been our plan to go ahead and use propane to power our stove and also our instant hot water heater. But until about the last 2 weeks, it's really been an afterthought, or not really an afterthought, it's just that I haven't gotten there yet. I've had a lot of other projects ahead of this one, but now we've got the stove in place, and here within about the next 2 weeks or so, I'm going to be installing the instant hot water heater as well. So it's time. I need to figure out where am I going to put the bottle and what precautions do I need to keep in mind when it comes to just storing it in a safe manner and just to make sure that there's no propane that gets inside the camper itself. Okay, so in terms of the propane location, I've had it in my mind that it's going to be in the right rear of the vehicle, so that would be the passenger rear outside storage locker. This is the same locker where the air conditioner mounts up to, or at least it backs up to it, and then the AC ducts go ahead and go through that locker and then outside the back of the rig. Like I said, a couple of weeks ago, I started doing a little bit of research on propane and the way that you're supposed to transport it and the way that you're supposed to store it. And when it comes to the DOT bottles, like the ones that I'm going to use, they are supposed to be stored in the upright position. Not a big deal. I can't imagine wanting to store it in a sideways position, at least not in the orientation that I've got available here in this camper anyway. Now, there's got to be room for a regulator, and there's got to be room for the hoses that attach to that regulator as well. But what I've come to find out is a lot of people build what they call a propane locker, which in its simplest form really is just a box. Now this box, it's got to be sealed, and there's going to be a hole in the bottom of the box, reason being that propane is heavier than air. So if you do get a leak with the propane, it's going to go down towards the bottom of the box. Worst case yet, maybe the pressure valve in the propane tank goes south on you, and that whole thing purges out. The way it is designed is that it's supposed to go to the bottom of the box and then vent out of that hole that's been drilled in the bottom of it. Now, that actually vents underneath of the vehicle that we've got here, and in this case, it's the retired ambulance. So I've never built one before. I mean, I've built wooden boxes before, and that's what we're going to do here today. I feel like this is a project that you can make as complex as you want, or you can make it as simple as you want. A lot of folks are just slapping some plywood together with a vent in the bottom and sticking it in the back of their van. Now, these guys are actually carrying this propane bottles, at some of the videos I've seen anyway, underneath of the kitchen cabinet or underneath of the bed platform. I guess if I had no choice, then I wouldn't mind doing that, but in this case, I'm pretty lucky, and we've got these exterior storage cabinets. Man, they are awesome when it comes to storage. So come check it out, watch me build a box, and watch how this thing ends out. I think you'll be pretty impressed. This is the location we want to put our propane bottle and our propane locker. So what is that going to look like? Well, that's what today's program is about. And what we're going to do is go ahead and create said propane locker. And what we're going to use is just some plywood, and we're going to go ahead and screw that together. We'll use a piece of PVC or some sort of pipe in order to vent that out of the bottom of the vehicle. And of course, it's also going to have a hatch on it to where you could take the bottle in and out, and probably have some clasps or something in order to hold that thing closed. Being on the inside of the vehicle here, as you could see, this is what we're putting it in, and it's going to go right underneath of those air conditioning ducts, so we certainly don't want any propane leaking and going into the air conditioner system or the inside of the vehicle. Most importantly, safety first. We just want to follow all the guides that we can. The odds of it leaking are probably pretty slim, but you know, stranger things have happened, and that's not something we want to discover when we're out sleeping, as all of a sudden wake up to the smell of propane. Of course, we're also going to have other safety precautions, such as a propane sniffer, like an alarm that'll go off if it senses that it is leaking, but we're going to go ahead, like I said, and construct that propane locker. So here we go. So just for the sake of simplicity, what I've opted to go with for a propane supply in this camper is just a standard 15-pound propane bottle. Now there's a lot of options out there. A lot bigger bottles can be found. You could also go with the big propane bottle like you see on big Class C motorhomes and bigger, that are a sideways tank that mounts up underneath of the vehicle. However, again, I'll say it again, this is a weekend rig, and one 15-pound bottle is going to be fine, and if we've got to stop at on cue or just wherever and do a quick swap out, that makes this really easy work, and that's something that we could do on the fly without much thought included. Matter of fact, the whole point of the Freedom Adventure is when it's time to go camp, it's time to go camp, and I don't want to go on an adventure in order to find a propane source to recharge a bottle that's permanently mounted to the rig. So to start off with, we're just going to do the obvious here, and we're going to do some measurements inside both of the cabinet, and we're also going to measure the dimensions of this bottle here just to see how big this thing really has to be. Now for a containment unit, it obviously doesn't have to be a whole lot bigger than this. It just has to be yay tall, about this wide, not a big deal. However, we want to just make sure that we've got plenty of easy access once this locker is built to where we can grab the handle, tilt it sideways, and pull it out. Also take into consideration the size of your regulator that you have on this, and in my case, the regulator is pretty good size, so I want an ample enough size cabinet that it's going to be easy and have plenty of room for the regulator that I've got on this. On top of that, I've also got a splitter on this unit that's going to take that gas and split it into two. One, it'll go to the stove, and then the other lead will go to the continuous hot water heater, which I've got sitting on the floor of the shop right now, but I just haven't had a chance to even get close to putting that in. That's another day's project. So let's go ahead and get started here and get some measurements done. Okay, so it looks like the locker that I'm going to be putting this in the Ambo build is about 19 inches deep. Width, I can go about as deep, or not deep, but as wide as I want to put it, all the way up to about 24 inches, give or take, but I don't want to go that far. Looking at the tank itself, it's probably, it's probably 12 inches wide, just the tank. So if I went 16 inches wide, that would give a couple on each side, and I'm going to want to have some insulation in there. So I think what I'm going to do is probably do 18 inches wide. That'll give plenty of room for the regulator. Ease of use, get my big hands in there in order to loosen connections and what have you. I'll probably do 18 by 18 by about 20 tall, give or take. So I want to get some plywood. I don't know what I've got left, but I've got a pile of stock over there from just old projects that I've had. It doesn't have to be pretty. Once again, guys, this just has to be a box. So that's what I'm going to start doing, is cutting some board. So, as it turns out, I've actually got quite a bit of 1/2-inch plywood left. I think just from the remnants of doing some of the wall coverings inside of the camper. And that's what I'm going to use, because that's what I've got. Most folks that I've seen on YouTube that have built these have built them out of 3/4-inch plywood. But again, this is what I've got on hand, and it's cabinet grade plywood. Probably a little bit overkill for what's needed, but hey, I don't have to go buy any, so that's a good thing, and that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm not going to use jigs to put this together. After all, it's a pretty rudimentary build, and I just don't think that that's going to be necessary. But what I am going to do is just use brad nails to go ahead and stab it together. We'll use a little bit of wood glue too. Not going to use pocket screws or anything fancy for what this is. This will be plenty strong enough, and I mean, if it's a little bit off, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Not using much wood glue, but just a tiny amount to glue the floor to the sidewall. Seems like no matter how little glue you use, you always get some squish through. Tell you what, man, these clamps have come in so handy. These are awesome. And for the price compared to what you're going to spend at Lowe's, the Jorgensen brand is kind of like the low price leader when it comes to Amazon purchases. And I tell you what, if you're wanting to purchase some, man, these are a great purchase to make. It is staggering what you could spend on tools. So when it comes to saving money where you can, I am all about that. Okay, so what I'm using to assemble this with are just some brad nails, and hopefully I'm able to get this done without splintering the wood and breaking through the side, but we're going to find out shortly enough. Man, I love this tool. All right. Now, this is not square here at this point. Doesn't really matter. This is the bottom, this will be the top, and my other side will square that out. Top and bottom attached to one side, and we'll go ahead and attach the other side. All right, so I know this isn't squared up or nothing, but it really isn't going to matter, I don't think, because by the time I cut my backboard, that will be what trues everything up, and there's enough flex, because these are just kind of held together by brad nails, that it should be just fine. So what I'll do here is go ahead and square up one one side. Go ahead and shove a brad into that side just to make sure that won't slide anywhere. And then do the same over here. There you go. So I found a random piece of scrap here that just might possibly, oh man, how lucky could a guy get? I mean, it is like dead on. Certainly dead on enough to be used. And awesome, awesome, awesome. Ooh, a little bit too much coffee today. Got them shaky shakes. All right, bam. Man, I love this tool. Okay, so let's move it this way. So this ought to be pretty easy. Bam, bam, bam. As you can see, there's probably plenty of side-to-side room. The situation between the top and the bottom is a bit tight. So I think I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the camper real quick and see what that looks like. Okay, so how hard is it to get this in and out? Tilt it. Goes in. It does scrape a little bit, but you know what? You know, I can deal with that. That's not bad. Well, for a little scraping, I certainly don't want to rebuild that. What we're going to do here at this point is go ahead and mock up a front door. And I think I'm going to start off with a piece much similar to the back. Go ahead and get that piece fit in there. And I'm going to have to make something on the bottom for it to hook into. Not really sure how to do that yet, but that's part of the fun, the figuring out. Now, one thing that's kind of neat there is I'll still have a little storage on top between the metal piping and the cabinet. And I've got a little storage between the front there as well, some up and down storage. I don't know what I'll put there, but it's actually kind of cool. So on to the fascia. All right, so let's cut another piece of wood. Once again, we're going to do 20 inches tall and what is it, 17 and approximately 15, 16 inches wide. Well, the old wood pile over there is getting a little bit smaller, and I'm kind of glad about that. Glad that I'm getting to use all this wood, because Lord knows I got a lot of money spent on it. And you go to buy cabinet grade plywood, this stuff is no joke. All right, here we go. Okay, these should get the job done. These are actually 1/2-inch staples. Okay, so I'll lather this sucker up. And stab it on down and position. But let's not do this blindly. Let's go ahead like that. Feeling good. All right, here we go. All right, take all this weight off. All right, so what does that look like? Hopefully good. That was a lot of work if it doesn't work. Not too bad. Man, I get down with that. That's looking pretty good. Might be actually a bit tight. Okay, so the roughed out shape of the box is here now, and you've got solid wall, solid floor and top, and then the back. And the front of it comes off, and when you open this, you could actually hear the air, the whoosh of the air coming out. So at this point, it is definitely airtight. Open that up, and this is what you've got on the inside. Okay, with a 15 bottle of propane inside this cabinet, you can see now kind of how everything fits. There is enough room to tilt it forward and then pull it out of the cabinet, and should be plenty of room on either side of the bottle. And like I said, we don't have to keep the bottle there. We could offset it to the side to make more room on the regulator side or whatever, and we're going to do that as soon as I could locate my regulator. I know it's around here somewhere. So here are the humble beginnings of a propane locker, a thing that I did not even know existed before about 2 weeks ago, but this is what we've done here so far. Essentially, it's a box. This box, however, opens up, and we're going to be running a rubber seal going around the edge here. I just haven't figured that out yet. I got to get on Amazon or go to Lowe's and find something. But once this panel comes out, you can see the propane tank is in there, and it's offset slightly to go ahead and accommodate for the regulator. So with the regulator just kind of loosely attached there, you can see that it does obviously take up some room. Comes a little further out into the cabinet, but not a big deal. We may end up having to go ahead and get like a right angle fitting right there, because coming straight off of that regulator, it's going to have a splitter. I'm not sure how big that splitter is going to be, but it will have to be split in order to supply fuel to two different appliances. I'm probably going to go ahead and cut like a 1-inch spacer to close this gap right here, and on the top I'm gonna go ahead and cut another piece of board that will go all the way from here all the way to the other side, and then close up that gap there at the back. We certainly don't want to lose anything back there, and it'll help to make it a little bit more, well, just complete. All in all though, so far, you know, for what it is, it's looking pretty good. Got to do something about that raw plywood though. Not a fan of that, and not a fan of this up here either. When this cabinet's open, it's gonna have to look better than that. So what I've got going here, and this was just kind of a last minute idea, was to go ahead and just put a coat of just clear coat, just polyurethane on the inside of this. I don't want to put it on the outside or the edges where the rubber seal is going to go, but I just wanted to get a little bit of a coat of protection. Just, I don't know, just to kind of finish out the inside of the cabinet. Just to add a little bit of zing to it. It's plywood, but you know, it's cabinet grade plywood, and I haven't even sanded this, and I'm not going to. It's going to get beat up, but I figure at least it'll look a little better than just regular old plywood. And besides that, I had the polyurethane sitting around, so why not, you know? Okay, well, let you take a look at this for yourself and see what you think. Now you can see a little bit of shine on that, but that's very wet right now, so it will die back a little, but you can get the idea. Same thing with the interior of this box. Like I said, you can see the little trails where the glue got out. Whatever. Still looks better than plywood. Okay, so I'm pretty well as far along as I can go here at this point. Not a whole lot left I can do since the clear coat's wet. Signing out for tonight, and I'll see you soon. All right, so after sitting overnight, the clear coat is catalyzed enough to where I can go ahead and put the face of the box on. And last night I went ahead and I put the rubber seal on that box as well. So just kind of checking it out, it does look like the seal makes it stick out probably a 1/4 inch or so. Which can be compressed a little bit, but let's take a look and see what it looks like. Man, that looks pretty good, especially considering it didn't get sanded, and for all practical purposes, it just got wiped down with a coat of clear coat. So my initial idea is to go ahead and mount a piece of angle iron or some sort of angled material here at the bottom, with part of it going underneath and then the other part coming up the side of this. That way the board could slide down into that and then push tight at the top, and then go ahead and use some sort of clasp here at the top to hold that closed. Here's a kind of a quick look at those rubber seals that I put on. There's those brown seals here, and you know, for what they are, they actually came out looking pretty good. They just two-side taped down to it, and I think they're going to do the job that they need to do pretty well. Well, here we are on day number 2, and this doesn't have to be a 2-day project for you guys. It's just on day number 1. I got started kind of late in the day. I really wasn't planning on doing the propane locker at that point, but I had the time towards the end of the day. I figured why not go ahead and utilize it, at least try to get some traction. Point being of all that though is this really could be a 1-day project if you choose to make it that way. It's not as long as it looks like I'm dragging this out for, but here we are. This is where I'm going to put the propane locker at, and yesterday I wrapped the day up by staining the inside of the locker, and I put the rubber seal on the door. So before I go any further, I just want to make sure that the locker still fits in here, because I believe I've got 18.5 inches from that curb down here all the way to the back of the cabinet, and it's a little bit over 18 the way it sits right now because that rubber seal did push that door out just a little bit. So before I go any further with the construction on it, I just want to make sure it still fits. All right, the base of the locker is in, and I'm ready to go ahead and see if that door that goes on the front, let's see if it fits. Man, I'll say it again, putting that stain on here really dolled it up. It certainly looks better than the raw plywood did. Definitely worth the time spent. At this point, it does appear like it's going to fit. Man, there's not a lot of room to play here. When I put that little piece of angle iron there on the bottom of it, it's going to be interesting to see if it still fits in there or if this is going to be a real tight fit. That's what we're going to find out tonight. It is a tight fit right now, and it's because of that curve down there at the bottom. Before we move forward here, what I'm going to do is cut a trim piece that goes in between the edge of this cabinet and goes down. And I think that's going to be about 1 inch, maybe 1 1/8 inches, but once this is all constructed, it'll basically close the gap between the box and that far wall. Okay, had to break out a light. It's getting a little bit dark out here in the shop, but as you can see, this is what I was talking about here. And that just fills that little gap. And as much as I would love to take this cabinet and shove it all the way up against that wall, I just can't. And the reason for that is it would put this point further in than this point, and it would make it impossible to open that door. So at this point, you just have to imagine what this will look like when you're not able to see the top of this or this unsightly gap here. Again, it'll have a board closing this top out, and then you'll have the little cubby over here for storage. All right, so I've screwed some angle iron onto the bottom of this, and essentially how this is going to work is you'll tilt this forward, lift up, and then you're good. And I think I'm going to have to do some probable bending of that angle. And the truth is going to be told when this is in the ambo, and if there's enough room between here and that front ledge that this does not interfere with it. But let's see. Let's check it out. Okay, so it was pretty snug fitting that in there, but the angle iron does clear. Not by a whole lot, but it does. So between the back of the cabinet and up front, it's pretty much making contact on both ends, which makes me a little nervous because we're going to see if this thing fits in here now. What do you think? Will it? Uh-oh, may have a problem. Oh, nope. Man, just look at that. All right, so at this point, sweet. If we can get the upper class put on, I believe we're going to be in good shape here. Well, how about that? It actually worked out. Sometimes I get lucky, guys. Okay, so I didn't really want this just to be a raw plywood box. I wanted it to have a little pizzazz to it. So what I ended up purchasing was this trunk spatter paint. And if you've ever seen the inside of a trunk of an old 60s or 70s car, you've probably seen something that looks pretty similar to this. You see, it's got, this in particular has got a gray base, and then it's got little speckles of white and a darker gray in here. In this camper's previous life as an ambulance, the insides of the exterior storage lockers were all coated in something very similar to this. Basically, I emptied a can of this stuff, and it goes pretty quick. If you ever plan on using this, buy more than a bottle. You're probably going to need it. In my case, I've only refinished the top, this side, and just a little bit of the strip that comes back here. So it's not even all covered. Now, I did put a pretty liberal coat on this thing, so, you know, it's on there pretty heavy. But even with that being said, it still looks a little streaky to me. But I don't know if what I'm looking at is just because it hasn't flashed off in its entirety yet, or if that's how the finished product is going to look. I may need to go ahead and dust over top of it again. I've actually got another bottle of it on the shelf. I may need to go over it one more time just to kind of even that out. So let's get a closer look at it. And in this light, you can kind of see the streaks in the video that I'm shooting here, but looking at it dead on, I really don't see it. So I don't know if that's just something funky I'm looking at from the video compared to the real deal or what, but it really does look good though. And if you look at it, you can see all the speckles. Looking at it from the top, it looks pretty grainy, so it's going to hide any imperfections. And this is probably going to get beat up. You know, this is in a storage cabinet, so there's going to be things hitting this practically every time that the rig gets used. But man, doesn't that look good? Sure looks good to me. Okay. So I just happen to be standing next to one of the cabinets that I cut out of this rig, so let's do kind of a side-by-side comparison. Here's the new stuff, and here's the old stuff. And you can see this has got quite a bit of wear on it. years and years of wear, and it's a little bit coarser in texture, but for the purpose of what we're doing here, I think this is going to blend out pretty well. I think it's not going to stick out in there. There's going to be a couple of clasps, one here and one here, which will hold the lid tight, and those will still be exposed, and you're going to see a little bit of this underneath of it, right here and right here. But there's going to be another board on this that acts as a shelf that'll go on top of this unit, and we'll show you more about that when we get there. I'll say it again, guys, I'm actually pretty impressed with this. The way this stuff smells, not so impressed. Right here you can see where I've kind of rubbed my finger across it, and it's pretty gunky, it's pretty thick. I don't know how long this stuff's going to take to cure, but I could assure you it's not going to happen here this evening. Work is pretty much wrapped up here tonight. Okay, so this morning when I got up, I was still seeing some speckly brown shining out from behind this spatter paint, which meant that it didn't really have super great coverage. What I was seeing was the plywood coming back, and I went ahead and I doused it with one more coat of the paint before I left for work. And tonight I got back and this is what it's looking like. I went ahead and I put on the angle, and as you can see, it's in place now. It does pull back. The angle does what it's supposed to do there. And before I put this in the camper, I'm going to go ahead and install those little latch assemblies here on the top. But before I do that, check out the inside of this. I really do think it looks great. Just that coat of poly that we put on there last night made a big, big difference. Something so simple can make just such a radical change in appearance. I don't believe this has got to be surgical, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get it roughed into position here. But as you can see, this turns and that'll adjust the tension on it. And then these levers you use as a release. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so these are in position now. They are not tight, but if I think correct here, spin this a couple times, a couple more. There we go. And these don't have to be just smoked down. They just need to put a little bit of pressure in order to hold that closed, which they are, and I think that's going to work. Okay, so now the latches are installed. We can go ahead and put this whole thing back into the camper. I'd like to think that this will be the last time, but it's probably not going to be. But now it's time to go ahead and drill the hole in the bottom of the floor of this in order to vent out. And there's a couple of things that I purchased tonight, and I was originally just going to go ahead and drill a hole, and I am. That's still going to happen. But what I've done is I've purchased a couple of fittings from Lowe's. One is a tailpipe off the bottom of a sink, and then another is actually a piece of PVC, but it's kind of a drain, and I'll show you here what I've got. So here's the tailpipe. And the idea is if I go ahead and I drill the hole and it's not perfectly round and I've got to elongate that hole in some way in order to get this to fit in there, then this little flange here will cover that elongation and it'll still look good. While I was there, I stopped in the PVC aisle and I found this, which is a little drain cap. And if it's big enough, this might be another way to go because it just offers some protection from stuff falling out. Not that it needs it, but it just looks a little bit better. So what do you think I ought to use? I'm kind of leaning on this one here. Here's what it looks like in the camper. Definitely a step above the raw plywood, without a doubt. It does have a little bit of a blue tinge to it compared to the original spatter paint. But once again, the spatter paint was just kind of a on-the-fly answer to, you know, what am I going to do other than just a raw plywood look. It's still going to offer protection to the wood. It won't get marred up, or actually it will get marred up, but you're just not going to see it really. All in all, man, I'm going to say 7 out of 10. Could have been better, but you know, that's what they had on the shelf as far as the spatter paint goes, and that's what I got here. Let's see what it looks like though with the front on it. Okay, well, there you have it. The lid's on, the latches are on, and really the last thing we need to do here is to go ahead and secure it to the floor, which I will do here in a second with some Tech screws. What you're looking at here is the bottom of the outside storage locker. You can see here it's got a couple of pretty heavy duty braces that are right there in the way, and I'm going to have to do a little measuring here. I don't mind cutting a hole in the floor of this thing, but what I don't want to do is to bore a big hole right through one of these braces. After all, they are there for a reason, and I don't want to weaken the structure, nor do I want to sit there and chew with a hole saw through that thing. No, don't really want to waste the time doing that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do here is to go ahead and secure that box to the floor. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the little self-tapping Tex wood to metal screws that I've got. They've worked great in other applications on this build, so that's what we're going to go ahead and use for the floor. But before I just break out a drill and go to town, I'm going to go ahead and drill some countersunk holes. That way the fit and finish is just a little bit better. As you can see here, I've got my handy little countersinking bit, and we're going to go ahead and pilot about 4 holes here. And of course, right after I get done talking about not wanting to cut or drill into braces, that's exactly what I just did. But it's in there now. So I've decided to go ahead and use this. I've already measured. It looks like it'll end up working. If not, I'll figure something out. I always do. Where do I want to put this in terms of the locker floor? But I really want to leave as much of that floor open as I can. After all, every inch counts in a small camper conversion. So not only can I put the propane in here, but I'll probably end up putting a few other random items in here as well. I don't know what yet, but I want the option. I'm going to go ahead, use a handy hole saw. And this battery is done. Always, always, always keep a spare battery on the charger. It's never disappointed yet. And there you go, piece of floor. Obviously here I need to go ahead and clean up the mess I just made, but here is kind of what we're looking at. Well, that came out actually better looking than what I thought it was going to. Not disappointed at all. Now it's time to go ahead and blow that dust out of there. Well, folks, there it is. In all of its glory, a propane locker, i.e. a box. Now, as you can see, the propane bottle, there's plenty of room around it for activities. There's plenty of room for the regulator, extra hose, and probably a few other items that we'll be sticking in there for storage. So that about wraps this up. We've still got a little bit of trimming out to do. We've got the board I told you about that's going to go on top. Before I do that, obviously, I need to figure out where exactly the propane hose is going to come out. Odds are it's probably going to come out on the top there, since it has to go in through that far wall into the camper. That's for another night. But for all practical purposes, our propane box is finished. What do you guys think? Give me some comments. Did I do good? Did I overdo it? I probably overdid it, but that's what I do. Well, folks, that's about all I've got for you here tonight. This is a really simple project, and if you're going to run a propane system, it's something you might want to consider. This is about as simple as it gets. Yes, I took it a little bit further than what is really necessary, but if you could see the inside of this thing, you'd understand that I'm not one to just kind of halfway do stuff, and it's not perfect. It's something you can knock out in a day. Even though I technically took about 3 days total to do this, but mainly because I added a couple of steps that added cure time to it. And those 2 steps was, of course, the polyurethane that's on the inside, and then, of course, that spatter paint on the outside. But y'all, that's all I've really got here at this point. Let me know what you think. Throw some comments in there. Did I take it too far? Was there something I missed? I'm not a propane expert, but I think I've got it good enough that it's going to be safe, and it's going to be safe to sleep inside the camper. At least that's the hope. If the old camper conversion here is something that you guys are interested in, like and subscribe. If I've offered anything here on this video that helps you guys with your build, it'll really help me out. I'm a small channel. Trust me when I say that. I need all the help I can get. If you have any questions, comments, post them up. I'd like to see them. Till next time, y'all, happy adventures, and I'll see you then.